Ever feel like you're on a treadmill?
Yeah.
Like you can't get off.
Yeah.
Always chasing the next thing, the next achievement, the next dopamine hit. Well, today we're taking a deep dive into a philosophy that offers a refreshingly different perspective.
Okay.
The philosophy of Epicurus.
It's interesting you frame it that way because Epicurus was very much about stepping off that treadmill.
Oh,
So to speak.
Right.
He was an ancient Greek philosopher who had some radical ideas about happiness, ideas that are surprisingly relevant to the anxieties we face today.
So we've got this podcast episode transcript about Epicurus and his teachings.
Right.
And I have to admit, I'm a little intrigued.
Okay.
We're constantly bombarded with messages about what will make us happy, buy this, achieve that, look like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Epicurus had a completely different take on it. He believed true happiness wasn't about external things, but about inner peace and contentment.
And what's fascinating is that Epicurus wasn't just theorizing in an ivory tower. He actually founded a school in Athens called the Garden, where he and his students lived out these principles.
Wow.
Imagine a community where the focus wasn't on amassing wealth or power,
Right.
but on simple living, meaningful relationships, and cultivating a tranquil mind.
The Garden.
Yeah.
I love that. It already sounds like a haven from the hustle and bustle of modern life.
Right.
But before we get too deep into the Garden,
Okay.
let's start with the basics.
Sure.
Who exactly was Epicurus?
Well, Epicurus was born way back in 341 BCE
Okay.
on the Greek island of Samos.
Wow. Okay.
He lived during a time of great social and political upheaval, which might explain his focus on finding happiness within
Oh, interesting.
rather than in external circumstances.
Yeah.
What's remarkable is that he didn't just keep his ideas to himself. He founded the Garden,
Right.
which welcomed both men and women, a radical concept in ancient Greece.
Yeah, absolutely.
They emphasized community living and putting Epicurus's philosophy into practice.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
A philosophical school that was also a way of life.
Exactly.
And this philosophy became known as Epicureanism, right?
That's right.
But I have to admit, when I hear the word Epicurean, I think of indulging in fine food and luxury.
Yeah.
Is that what he was all about?
It's a common misconception,
Okay.
probably because the word has evolved over time.
Right.
While Epicurus did believe in enjoying life's pleasures,
Okay.
he wasn't talking about lavish excess.
Yeah.
His idea of pleasure was much more nuanced.
Okay, so let's unpack this idea of pleasure.
Okay.
Because it seems key to his philosophy.
For Epicurus, true pleasure was synonymous with happiness.
Okay.
But he believed that lasting happiness wasn't found in fleeting indulgences. He believed it came from achieving a state of ataraxia.
Ataraxia.
Yeah.
That sounds intense.
It might sound intimidating,
Yeah.
but it's a concept that resonates deeply with a lot of modern thinking.
Okay.
Ataraxia is essentially a state of tranquility, a calmness mind undisturbed by anxieties or fears.
Okay.
Think of it like the ultimate chill,
Yeah.
a place of inner peace that's not dependent on external circumstances.
I can definitely see how that would be the foundation for true happiness.
Yeah.
If you're constantly worried or stressed,
Yeah.
it's hard to actually enjoy anything,
Right.
no matter how luxurious it might be.
Exactly.
Right?
Epicurus believed that a lot of our unhappiness comes from chasing things we don't need.
Okay.
Wealth, fame, power, or fearing things that haven't even happened.
Oh, wow.
This constant desire and fear keeps us in a state of turmoil and prevents us from experiencing true contentment.
So instead of always striving for more or fearing the worst,
Yeah.
Epicurus was saying, hey, find your inner peace first, and happiness will follow.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
He was essentially advocating for a shift in perspective
Right.
from focusing on what we lack to appreciating what we already have. He believed that simple pleasures, like enjoying a meal with friends or spending time in nature,
Right.
could bring deep satisfaction if we approach them with a tranquil mind.
This reminds me of the whole mindfulness movement.
Yeah.
Being present in the moment and savoring those simple joys.
That's a great connection. Epicurus was a proponent of mindfulness centuries before it became a buzzword.
Wow.
He believed that paying attention to the present moment rather than dwelling on the past or worrying about the future was essential for achieving ataraxia.
Okay, I'm starting to get a clearer picture of Epicurus and his ideas.
Good.
But it all sounds a bit idealistic.
Yeah.
How do we actually achieve this state of inner peace and contentment
Yeah.
in the real world,
Right.
especially with all the pressures and distractions we face today? Did he offer any practical advice?
He did, and that's what makes his philosophy so relevant even thousands of years later.
Oh,
Epicurus outlined specific methods and mindsets for cultivating happiness,
right.
and they're surprisingly applicable to our modern lives.
All right. I'm ready to hear some ancient wisdom for the modern age.
Okay.
Let's dive into those methods.
Sure.
What was step one on the path to Epicurean happiness?
Well, for Epicurus, the foundation of a happy life was simple living.
Okay.
Now, he wasn't advocating for austerity or deprivation,
Right.
but rather for a conscious shift away from excess and towards appreciating the essentials.
So not about becoming a minimalist and living in a tiny house,
Right.
but more about being mindful of our consumption and finding joy in the simple things.
Exactly. Think about it this way. We live in a society obsessed with the more is better mentality.
Yeah.
But research shows that beyond a certain point, accumulating more stuff doesn't actually increase happiness.
Right.
In fact, it often leads to more stress and anxiety.
Yeah.
Epicurus was onto this idea centuries ago.
Wow.
He believed that by simplifying our lives and focusing on quality over quantity, we could free ourselves from the constant pursuit of more
Right.
and find contentment in what we already have.
This is making me think about those studies on the psychology of eating.
Oh, yeah.
They found that people actually enjoy food more when they eat mindfully,
Right.
savoring each bite and paying attention to the flavors and textures.
Yes.
It seems like that's very much in line with Epicurus's idea of simple living, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's about engaging all your senses,
Yeah.
being fully present in the experience rather than just mindlessly consuming.
Right.
And this principle of mindful appreciation applies to all areas of life, not just food.
Okay.
Imagine taking that same approach to spending time in nature, listening to music,
Yeah.
or even just having a conversation with a friend.
Right.
The depth of your experience changes when you're fully present.
Yeah. It's like we've been conditioned to rush through life,
Yeah.
always looking ahead to the next thing, and we miss out on the beauty of the present moment.
And that brings us to another key aspect of Epicurus's philosophy, the practice of consciously evaluating our desires. He distinguished between natural and necessary desires, like the need for food, shelter, and friendship,
Right.
and those that are unnecessary and often driven by societal pressures or a sense of lack.
Okay.
He argued that by learning to identify and let go of those unnecessary desires,
Right.
we could free ourselves from a lot of suffering.
So it's about asking ourselves, do I really need this?
Yeah.
Or am I just caught up in the hype?
Exactly.
It seems especially relevant today with social media constantly bombarding us with images of things we should have or experiences we should be having.
Precisely. It's about taking a step back and critically examining those messages
Right.
that tell us we need more to be happy. Epicurus believed that true happiness comes from within,
Yeah.
from cultivating a state of inner peace and contentment,
Right.
not from chasing external validation.
It's about finding that sense of enoughness.
Yes.
Of being satisfied with what we have.
Exactly.
Rather than constantly striving for what we lack.
And this idea of letting go of unnecessary desires ties directly into Epicurus's emphasis on cultivating a tranquil mind.
Okay.
He believed that true happiness wasn't possible if our minds were constantly agitated by worries and anxieties.
Okay, so how did he suggest we tame that mental monkey?
Right.
Did he have any ancient hacks for finding inner peace?
Well, he didn't have meditation apps or noise-canceling headphones.
Right.
But he did advocate for practices that are surprisingly similar to what we might find in a modern mindfulness course. He believed in training the mind to focus on the present moment, to let go of anxieties about the past and future, and to cultivate a sense of acceptance of what is.
So instead of getting caught up in the what ifs and the should haves, it's about focusing on what's actually happening right now, experiencing it fully without judgment.
You got it. He believed that this practice of mindfulness, this conscious awareness of the present moment, was crucial for achieving ataraxia, that state of inner tranquility we talked about earlier.
Okay.
And what's fascinating is that modern research is actually confirming what Epicurus observed centuries ago.
Wow.
Studies have shown that mindfulness practices can reduce stress, improve focus, and even increase feelings of well-being.
It's amazing how this ancient wisdom is being backed up by modern science.
Yeah.
It really highlights the timelessness of these ideas.
Absolutely.
But I'm curious about something.
Okay.
We've talked about simple living, mindfulness, and mastering our desires.
Right.
But didn't Epicurus also have something to say about the importance of friendship?
Yes, he did.
That seems like a bit of a contrast to the idea of withdrawing from the world and seeking solitude.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
It might seem like a contradiction,
Right.
but Epicurus actually saw friendship as absolutely essential for a happy life.
Oh, okay.
He didn't believe that happiness could be found in isolation.
So how did he reconcile the need for inner peace with the importance of social connection?
Well, for Epicurus, friendship wasn't about superficial interactions or chasing popularity.
Okay.
It was about cultivating genuine bonds with people who shared your values
Mm-hmm.
and brought joy and support to your life.
Yeah.
He believed that these deep connections contributed directly to our sense of well-being.
This makes me think about how even in our hyper-connected world,
Right.
there's a growing epidemic of loneliness.
Hmm.
We might have thousands of followers online,
Yeah.
but are those connections truly fulfilling our need for belonging and support?
That's a really important question.
Yeah.
Epicurus believed that investing time and effort in building meaningful relationships,
Right.
those face-to-face connections where we could share experiences and offer mutual support,
Mm-hmm.
was crucial for happiness.
Yeah.
And, research suggests that he was onto something.
Okay.
Studies have shown that strong social connections are linked to better mental and physical health
Wow.
and even increased longevity.
It's a reminder that we're social creatures by nature and that those bonds are essential for our well-being.
Yes.
We might think we can find happiness on our own,
Right.
but Epicurus would probably argue that we need those deep connections to truly thrive.
Exactly. And there's one more aspect of Epicurus's philosophy that might surprise you,
Okay.
especially considering the topic of happiness.
Right.
He believed that confronting our fear of death was actually a key to living a more joyful and fulfilling life.
Okay. That one definitely seems counterintuitive.
Yeah.
How can thinking about death possibly make us happier? I have to admit, I'm struggling to wrap my head around that one.
Yeah.
It seems like focusing on death would just make you more anxious, not less.
It's a natural reaction. We're conditioned to avoid thinking about death, to see it as something morbid or frightening. But Epicurus saw it differently. He believed that much of our anxiety stems from the fear of the unknown. By accepting our mortality as a natural part of life, he argued we could free ourselves from that fear and live more fully in the present moment.
So it's not about dwelling on death, but about using the awareness of our limited time to inspire us to make the most of life.
That's a great way to put it. Epicurus believed that by confronting our fear of death, we could actually heighten our appreciation for life. It's like this. When you're constantly worried about the end, you miss out on the beauty and joy of the journey. But when you accept that the journey is finite, you're more likely to savor each step along the way.
It's a powerful reminder to shift our focus from fearing what we might lose to appreciating what we have right now. But even if we accept this idea intellectually, how do we actually put it into practice? It's not like we can just snap our fingers and stop fearing death.
You're right. It's not about suppressing those feelings or pretending they don't exist. Epicurus believed that facing our mortality was an ongoing practice, a process of reflection and contemplation. He suggested things like writing your own eulogy or visualizing your own funeral.
Wow, those are pretty intense exercises.
They can be, but they're designed to help us confront our deepest fears and anxieties head on. The idea is that by repeatedly exposing ourselves to the idea of death, we can desensitize ourselves to the fear and start to see it as a natural part of life, not something to be dreaded.
It's like the more we familiarize ourselves with something that scares us, the less power it has over us. But even beyond facing our fear of death, Epicurus's philosophy seems to offer so many practical tools for navigating the challenges of modern life. It's like a roadmap for finding happiness in a world that often feels designed to make us stressed and dissatisfied.
And what's beautiful about it is that it's not about adhering to rigid rules or doctrines. It's about adopting simple yet powerful principles that can help us cultivate a more fulfilling and meaningful existence.
So for those of us listening who are feeling inspired to embrace a little bit of Epicurean wisdom, what are some key takeaways? What are some concrete things we can do to start incorporating these ideas into our daily lives?
Well, first and foremost, remember that Epicurus believed happiness starts from within. It's not about chasing external things, but about cultivating a state of inner peace and contentment. So start by simplifying your life. Focus on appreciating the things you already have, and be mindful of your consumption. Ask yourself, do I truly need this, or am I just caught up in the hype?
It's about breaking free from that constant cycle of wanting more and finding satisfaction in the present moment.
Exactly. And that brings us to the importance of mindfulness. Make time each day to cultivate a tranquil mind. Engage all your senses in everyday activities. Savor your food. Appreciate the beauty of nature. Truly listen when someone is speaking to you. These small acts of awareness can bring a surprising amount of joy and peace.
It's about slowing down and really experiencing life, rather than just rushing through it on autopilot.
And remember the power of genuine connection. Nurture your relationships with people who bring you joy and support. Make time for face-to-face interactions, share experiences, and offer each other a listening ear. In our increasingly digital world, those real-world connections are more important than ever.
It's a reminder that we're not meant to go through life alone, that we need those human bonds to truly thrive.
And finally, don't shy away from contemplating your mortality. Use it as a tool to appreciate the preciousness of life, to inspire you to live more intentionally and make the most of each day. Remember, it's not about dwelling on death, but about using the awareness of our limited time to fuel our passion for living.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. Who knew that a philosophy developed over 2,000 years ago could be so relevant to our modern lives? Epicurus's teachings offer a timeless roadmap to happiness, a roadmap that emphasizes simple living mindfulness, meaningful connection, and the courage to face our fears.
It's a philosophy that empowers us to choose happiness, to cultivate it from within, rather than waiting for it to come from external circumstances. And that's a message that resonates deeply, no matter what challenges we face in life.
So to all our listeners out there, take a moment today to appreciate the simple things, connect with someone you care about, and remember that this moment right now is all we truly have. Go out and make it count.